will now begin today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Eat Well to Be Well, Food and Cooking Tips to Keep Your Heart Healthy. My name is Katie Ramos, and I am the Administrative Services Manager for Goodwin House at Home. February is American Heart Month, and we hope you are wearing your red at home today, like we are. We have an exciting webinar planned for you, which includes hearing from two of our Goodwin House registered dietitian nutritionists who will share insight about a heart-healthy diet. Additionally, you are sure to enjoy a live cooking demonstration with Goodwin House culinary and innovation chef, Brian Patterson. This webinar is being recorded so those not able to join us today can listen to the program at a time that is convenient for them. A link to the audio recording will be included in an email to all who registered, which will be sent out next week. And now for a few housekeeping notes. You will see the PowerPoint slides and our featured experts on your computer for only part of the time. The majority of today's presentation will be the cooking demonstration. You may want to adjust your volume on your computer if you're having trouble hearing me or our experts. We have allowed time for questions and answers following the presentation. Chef Brian and our two dietitians would love to interact with you throughout the presentation also, so we encourage questions and comments throughout today's webinar. Let's review how to submit a question. Feel free to enter a question in your questions pane at any time during the webinar. This slide provides visual instruction on how to do that. I'll give you a moment to look at this slide. Next is our agenda for the next hour. You will hear from Alison and Saba, who will share the importance of a heart-healthy diet. Then we will see Chef Brian Patterson, who will make Vietnamese spring rolls, and we will conclude with audience questions. It is now my pleasure to introduce your moderators for today's webinar. Alison Liggett and Saba Barkneh, Goodwin House registered dietitian nutritionists. Welcome, Alison and Saba.
Hi, welcome. Hi, everyone.
Hello, welcome everyone.
It is also a pleasure to introduce Chef Brian Patterson, Goodwin House culinary and innovation chef. You will meet him later in today's webinar for his cooking demonstration. So without further ado, I will pass it off to Ali and Saba. Welcome.
Yes, welcome everyone. We're excited to be here. The topic is heart disease, and as you know, February is Heart Health Month. According to CDC, heart disease remains the leading cause of death in US, and diet and lifestyle choices and few other key factors play a big role in prevention. So the key is prevention. In most cases, heart disease is preventable when people adopt healthier lifestyle, which includes eating right, not smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, controlling blood sugar, controlling cholesterol, and treating high blood pressure. Taking care of your heart by focusing on the risk factors is very, very important. Those are the risk factors you can control. Some risk factors you can't control, i.e. Family history. It's a risk factor, but you can focus on the things that you're able to control. And today we are focusing on the factor that you can control, which is your diet. What you can, by eating healthy, you can reduce your risks greatly. And what do we mean by eating right? It's mostly eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, choosing whole grains whenever it's possible. And I would emphasize on the whole grains It's not just whole grain bread, it's grains, actual grains that you can include in your diet, i.e. cracked wheat, buckwheat, whole grain rice. They're a very good source of fiber, which helps to lower cholesterol as well. And including more healthy fats in your diet will decrease your intake of unhealthy fats. And when we mean by healthy fats is oily fish, avocados, so versus a hot dog or processed meat. And also, if you aim to be active, physically active, at least for 30 minutes a day, will help the heart to be stronger and get enough oxygen in your body. And also decreasing stress helps as well, and as well as getting adequate sleep, relaxation, practicing relaxation techniques, and nurturing relationships to avoid stress. So those are the factors that we can control. And for the most part, everybody can control what they can eat and what they can't eat and what they want to eat. Now, I'm going to pass it on to Chef Brian to explain what he's going to be doing in a delicious Vietnamese summer roll with peanuts dipping sauce, which includes a variety of colorful vegetables. Over to Chef Brian.
Good afternoon, and we are broadcasting live from Goodwin House, Alexandria, in apartment 354. And we are not only celebrating Health and Heart Awareness Month, which is February, we are also coincidentally celebrating the Chinese New Year, which is today. So by killing two birds with one stone, we are going to make some Vietnamese summer rolls. And summer rolls are different from spring rolls in that spring rolls are typically fried and summer rolls are not. They're made with a rice paper wrapper, which is really kind of cool. It's a processed rice, but it's still grain, made from whole grain rice. And they are made into a rice paper, which is then air dried on bamboo mats, which kind of gives it this manhole kind of design on it. But that's from the woven mats that they're dried on. These are from Vietnam. They are imported from Vietnam. They make them with tapioca as well as wheat, but the rice paper is the more traditional wrapper. The reason that we're making these, I selected this recipe today is, if you can see, we are really accentuating a great way to facilitate eating fresh vegetables, fresh herbs, not a lot of processed food. And it's not only eating the right stuff, but they're delicious and they look great. So it makes them that much easier to eat. Let me review a little bit the ingredients that we're going to put into our summer rolls today. I have finely julienne carrots, finely sliced red bell pepper. So there's a lot of knife skills here that you can practice to get these things fine. And it's very important that you want to have finely sliced ingredients, because when you go to bite your summer roll, you don't want to have to wrestle with it with your incisors. You want to be able to really just shear it off very easily. And so it's much easier to chew and digest as well. So there's a design function to why we're slicing and dicing all this stuff. So red bell peppers, julienne carrots. I have a little bit of grilled chicken, which I've shredded. So that's an option. We also have finely julienne cucumber. I have avocado, which may not be traditional Vietnamese fare, but we've heard from Saba. It is one of the desirable fruits that we can include in our diet. And then in the herbs, I also have a very soft butter leaf lettuce. I don't want a stiff, crunchy lettuce. I want a soft, crepe-like lettuce that can be rolled into the summer roll. And then I have lots of fresh cilantro, Thai basil. So this is not our Genoa Italian basil, but it's actually a little more interesting with that Asian flavor of Thai basil. Fresh mint and garlic chives, which are a type of chive that is available in Asian markets. And you may say, chef, where am I going to get all these exotic ingredients, these Asian summer roll wrappers and these sorts of things? There are Asian markets peppering all over our neighborhoods here. There is no reason not to be able to find these ingredients at a market that accentuates Asian ingredients. Another ingredient that we're using is mung bean noodles. So mung beans are kind of an interesting long green bean looking thing, but they make them into our mung bean noodles. So these are the same noodles that you would see in like a glass noodle salad or different kinds of Thai or Vietnamese noodle dishes. Very, very delicious, very easy to cook. So all of my ingredients are very refreshing, very light, all the right ones for us to be eating in the discussion about heart health, as well as good flavor. It's got to taste good as well as be good for you. So the technique here is to take my rice paper wrapper, and all I need to do to prepare it for use is to dip it into room temperature water. So I have a bowl of water here that is just enough to hydrate that wrapper. And I'm going to give it about 30 seconds or so for that rice paper wrapper to soften and become very malleable and pliable, okay? When we talk about all this prep here, we call that in French cuisine our mise en place, to put in place. So it's very important that you have everything ready to go so that when you start hydrating your wrappers, your ingredients are all set up for you, all within hand's reach. Okay, you can start to see that summer roll rice paper wrapper starting to become soft and pliable. And what's interesting, we're always looking for interesting wrappers. This rice paper wrapper is so cool in that, here I'm dabbing it off a little bit on a dry, clean towel, just to wick off some of the water, excess water. So it's really cool because this wrapper is self-adhesive. You can actually roll it and it will stick to itself when you're done filling it with ingredients. Now, it's very important that you do not overfill your summer roll. It's just like a burrito or a dumpling or phyllo dough or anything else you're working with. We don't want to overfill it because then it's going to be asking too much of that wrapper to try and hold everything together. So you may also hear of these referred to as salad rolls. They can, given from one restaurant to another, they may accentuate more or less vegetables or mung bean noodles. Protein is an option. I've seen some of these summer rolls where they'll put all kinds of elegant fried proteins, but we're keeping it very simple here with a little bit of grilled chicken if we want to go that route. What's nice about this array of ingredients is you're in control. You have your choice of what you will either leave in or leave out of your summer rolls. And if you're serving a party where there are a variety of folks, maybe there are carnivores and herbivores, etc., you can actually make one set of summer rolls that are good for the carnivores and one set that are good for the vegetarians. And I'll show you how you can kind of signify or mark those to be identifiable as one or the other. So let's go ahead and build a summer roll with some grilled chicken. And I've got my avocado, I've got a little bit of Thai basil, my fresh mint, a couple of pieces of carrot, a few leaves of cilantro, red bell pepper, pinch of grilled chicken. Doesn't take much when you've got this nice array. Remember, sometimes what makes food interesting is the composition of the dish, that there's a variety of things in each bite, and that makes things more interesting to eat. Now, I'm basically using, for lack of a better expression, the diaper roll. I'm basically folding that over and keeping it nice and tight. I'm going to bring this edge in over here and bring this edge in over here, and then pulling with just a little bit of tension to keep it nice and tight and compact. And as I finish the roll, it seals itself. Okay, so that's a pretty nice one. Let me show you now a technique for making one that either has something or deletes something, so that you can indicate to your guests whether it's maybe has grilled shrimp in it, or it has grilled tofu, or it has grilled chicken, or it's just vegetables. And one of the ways that we can decorate these rolls to indicate one way or the other is with a marker like a piece of Chinese garlic chives. And that's one of the last things we'll roll into it, to create a little marker, create a little identifier. And you can say that the ones with the garlic chive indicator is the one without grilled chicken, for example.
Hi, Chef
Now,
Brian.
when you really get rolling, so to speak. Oh, yeah. Allison?
Yeah. Oh, this is Katie. We actually have a question from the audience.
Yeah.
And that question is it necessary to turn over the rice paper while it's soaking in the water? So I thought it would be a good time to ask that question while you're doing that right now.
Is it essential? No. Is it just part of my show business? Kind of. It does more efficiently get the job done. I've seen some makers who grew up making these that will actually soak several wrappers at a time. In fact, I was just going to say, when you get rolling on these, if I were to start rolling this one and I put another wrapper in, that kind of sets a timer in place for how quickly I need to roll this one before I need to take the next one out of the water. Does that make sense? So that when you really get proficient at this, the built-in pacemaker of making them is that the next wrapper has got to come out of that water in so many seconds. So you only have 25, 30 seconds to make the one you're working on. Does that make sense? All right, so let's go ahead and thank you for that good question. And actually, you may see in some Vietnamese or Thai restaurants that they'll actually bring this whole kit to the table with a little device that you put your wrapper in, and you can literally roll them at the table yourself, which is kind of a cool, chic new innovation. Okay, so I'm going to just make this one vegetables only.
Chef Brian, and this is Katie again. We also have a question about the basil.
Yes.
So we have a question from Nancy wondering, is regular basil okay, or do I need the Thai basil?
You know, it's interesting. I'm sticking to the more traditional ingredients because I tend to be a traditionalist. But think about it. You can use this vessel to wrap almost anything. You could put couscous and chickpeas and butternut squash in here. You could. I have worked with these in the past when I was a rambunctious young chef. I see I put that garlic chive in there, and that indicates that this is one particular type of summer roll. And I can put that into the mix here. But I actually made this where I put a whole Mediterranean stew, like a ratatouille, into these summer roll wrappers. So it was a little bit fusion, a little bit very non-traditional, but functionally these wrappers can really accommodate all kinds. They're another vessel that you can put all kinds of interesting combinations in that wrapper. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? I hope so. One other aspect of my prep here, if you think about it, everything that's laid out here is essentially the same stuff that you might find in a great glass noodle salad. So when you get tired of rolling your summer rolls, or you're done rolling your summer rolls, dump all these ingredients into a bowl with a little bit of a nice soy sauce or fish sauce, or some more heart-healthy kind of sauce that Alison and Saba would prefer me to use. And you've got yourself a nice, refreshing Thai salad or Vietnamese salad. What's interesting, one of the origins of the summer roll is that it was the MRE of Vietnamese troops in Vietnam. And so you would find these often were made and then carried for the day, either into as a troop or even as farmers. This was kind of your day snack, your lunch snack, and it was easy to and very portable, but full of fresh stuff. We're going to talk, let me roll one more roll here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the dipping sauce that we have that we're going to accompany our summer roll with. And thank you for your good question.
Chef Brian, this is Alison. I just have one quick question for you.
Teachers are just yackers without. Yes.
Oh, sorry, it looked like you were cutting out. So I was just going to ask you, how far in advance can you make these? Say you were having people over for dinner and you wanted to make them in advance.
So I would not make these much more than the night before. It would be ideal. Day of is the best, and in the moment is absolutely the best. But if you were making this for a party of several, 10, 15 people or so, absolutely make them the night before, wrap them and keep them very moist. And one thing you can do is take a little bit of vegetable oil. In this case, I have a little canola oil, and just to prevent them from drying out, you can just give them a little tiny kind of sheen or brush of vegetable oil to keep them hydrated and prevent them from drying out. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So Alison, I have a question for you.
Yes.
In what year was Heart Healthy Month proclaimed by Congress?
Oh, I don't know. Do you know the answer? I hope you do.
It turns out it was President Johnson in 1963 who proclaimed February of 1964 to be Heart Health Month, and to prevent cardiovascular disease and pay more attention to our diets.
It seems like not all of us.
All right, let me talk a little bit about our dipping sauce here. So we have a combination of smooth, creamy peanut butter. I'm going to bring my face down here so you can see me and your dipping sauce. You have the recipe there as well, but it's creamy peanut butter, as well as coconut milk and sodium-free soy sauce, and a little bit of coriander, powdered coriander, as well as, did I say coconut milk?
You did.
Yeah, and what else I put in there?
Is it ginger?
Oh, and chili paste.
Chili paste.
I did not put any ginger. You could absolutely put ginger in here. You could even have a variety of dipping sauces where maybe you have one that's more fish sauce based. But this is actually the classic dipping sauce for summer rolls. That nice combination of coconut milk, peanut butter, chili sauce to your taste. If you like it a little spicier, a little hotter, then spice it up. You can also add a little bit of citrus, like lime juice, to give it a little more acidity. And one nice way to present your summer rolls, if you're on a buffet or something like that, is to just go ahead and cut them in half and reveal the interior of the summer roll as part of your presentation, which is kind of nice. So that's kind of it from the kitchen on summer rolls, unless there's more questions. And I'm going to keep making them because I know I have a production crew and so a couple of dietitians that are not working for free here, and I know that they're eager for some summer rolls. So I'm going to keep rolling while the audience thinks about their questions and the dietitians think about their wisdom.
Chef Brian, this is Katie. We do have another question that came through.
Yeah.
The question from Nadine is, can rolls be steamed to cook the veggies?
I've not seen these wrappers used in a steaming application, kind of like a steamed bun. I know what you're talking about. I have seen these same wrappers, though they don't need any cooking whatsoever. But I have seen them used fried. Personally, if I'm going to fry a roll, I'm going to go ahead and use a spring roll wrapper, a proper spring roll wrapper, to get that right crunch. These are a little more fragile and delicate, but that's a good question about steaming. If I were to put maybe some raw fish and some vegetables in one of these and then put them in a steamer, not in my experience, but not out of the question. I may have to give that a try. It's a good question.
That sounds more like dumpling.
Yeah, dumplings. That again, in the world of Asian cuisine, in the world of dumplings and wrappers, there is a different dough or wrapper for almost each application. And for like the gyoza wrappers for Japanese pot stickers is a much different wrapper. They are made with rice, but they're made to withstand and tolerate a lot more heat and searing. Does that make sense?
I agree. I think these are too delicate to be steamed. Even if you leave, in my experience, if you leave them in the water for too long, they get soggy and almost you can't use them almost. They just get too soft.
Oh yeah, if you leave the wrapper in too long, they just disintegrate.
Hi, Chef Brian. This is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
We have another question from the audience from Karen. I think there was a bit of a lag with the connection when you were talking about the dipping sauce. So she said they couldn't hear the ingredients. So would you mind reviewing that one more time for the audience, please?
So I use a creamy peanut butter, okay? And I use powdered coriander, and you have the recipe written there, but I'm showing you the ingredients themselves. I had a little bit of, this is the preferred brand of coconut milk. This is an unsweetened coconut milk. So when you get coconut milk for your Mai Tais or your pina coladas, that's not the coconut milk you want to use in your cooking, okay? This is a unsweetened coconut milk, and this is the ideal brand to be using. And then I use a little bit of soy sauce, as well as my pickled ground chili Saba olik here. And then I adjusted the consistency with water just to thin it out as necessary.
So I have some fun facts about peanut butter. It takes 540 peanuts to make a 12-ounce jar. So there's 540 peanuts in that jar that is next to Brian. It's also very high in protein and fiber. So that's one reason as a dietitian why I really like a peanut dipping sauce. It's not just a sauce that's going to add flavor. I mean, not just going to add, flavor to your meal, but it's actually going to add a lot of nutrition. So it's high in protein, fiber, a lot of healthy fats in there. So it's a really good type of sauce to use. And instead of a normal soy sauce, Chef Brian used a reduced sodium soy sauce so that it was still heart healthy.
And as if we couldn't do another tie-in to a February holiday or commemoration, in the spirit of Black History Month, peanuts were really brought to the fore in agriculture by George Washington Carver, who was born into slavery and was a freed slave. Ended up attending a fair amount of technical institutes and did very well, taught out of Tuskegee, but he accentuated the use of peanuts, not so much for their nutritive value, but for restoring the soil between different crops, especially cotton and other commodity crops. that planting peanuts would add nitrogen back into the soil. So a lot of us think that he developed a lot of peanut cookery, but in fact his claim to fame is that he introduced peanuts as a rotation crop for revitalizing the soil, and that changed for the better a lot of commerce in agricultural societies.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Chef Brian, and love the connection to Black History Month. We have more questions coming in if you're ready to take some more questions from the audience.
We're ready.
Chef Brian, can you hear me?
I'm ready. I can roll and...
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure you could hear us. So the question is, your recipe called for soaking thread noodles, then wringing them, dropping them in boiling water. Did I miss this part in your demonstration?
So the mung bean noodles want to be hydrated first and then dipped in boiling water for about 20-30 seconds. No more, because they will literally disintegrate. But that's the approved technique, and if you follow the directions on the wrapper, as well as Asian food educators more experienced than myself, and I have to give props to the teachers that I learned all this stuff from. There was one particularly beautiful teacher that I worked with from Thailand who taught me just about everything I know about summer rolls. So you always need to give attribution when you have a skill or a knowledge or a talent, and pay that forward from the person who taught it. So thank you, Chef Sompopo, for teaching me about cooking mung bean noodles properly. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Chef Brian. We had a question from Karen asking, where do we see the recipes he mentions? The recipe was emailed prior to the event from my email. This is Katie. So if you want to check your email, otherwise we will be sending it out again with the recording.
I'd like to just reiterate that these ingredients that you're going to read about in those recipes are not as exotic as you may think. You know, we're in a pretty cosmopolitan area here to begin with, and especially here in Northern Virginia, there is a plethora of Asian-influenced restaurants and grocery stores and shops. So, and all of this stuff is available online now too. So these are not inaccessible or as exotic as you may think.
And
Great,
Chef
thank
Brian,
you.
Chef Brian, this is Alison. So I actually found almost all the ingredients at Harris Teeter that was in the area. So I actually did not go, even though across the street from my house is an Asian market and I could have easily gone there as well. I just went to Harris Teeter because I was already there and could find almost everything.
I love that that's the state of our grocery stores these days, but I would not want to deprive you of the experience of going to some of these Asian markets and just, you know, sometimes it's like going to another country to see the crazy produce and frozen goods and fish and proteins that are available that you might not see in any other setting. So do yourself a favor and take a field trip to a really truly authentic Asian market, and the smells and the surroundings will transport you.
Thank you, Chef Brian. This
My
is
wife
Katie
and I have
again.
one. Hi, yeah.
I think this next question might be for our fabulous Goodwin House dietitians, Ali and Saba. So the question is about heart low sodium. How much is too much?
How much is too much of sodium? Was that the question, right, Katie?
Yes,
So
that's correct.
generally speaking, for a heart healthy diet, you should aim to get around 1,500 milligrams of sodium or less per day. And I believe when I looked at the dietary guidelines, most Americans are consuming over 3,000 milligrams per day, with most consuming actually more than around like 4,000 milligrams of sodium per day. And they generally find that if you are doing some cooking at home, you can really decrease that salt intake. So for those of you who are able to cook at home, that's great. Goodwin House Alexandria and Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads is also very aware of sodium content and tries to reduce sodium in all the places that they can. But when you go out to a regular restaurant, it's going to be much higher in sodium.
Can I speak to that too, from the chef's point of view?
Of course, please.
So yes, we absolutely do need to manage and moderate our salt intake. And you know, us fans of fried foods and slabs of meat and that sort of thing, you know, Mardi Gras is coming up to complete the tour of February holidays, and followed by Lent, which is the time that we traditionally scale back on our rich meats and rich food, which is just in time, maybe coincidental for Heart Awareness Month. But remember that we do need in our body some salt. Now, we're going to get all the salt we need without trying. There's plenty of salt in these ingredients without having to add salt. But I have to say, I'd be remiss as a chef to not point out that salt is essential to the perception of flavor. So don't deny yourself salt either. Use it properly, use it in the right place. But in order to perceive sweet, sour, and bitter, your mouth needs salt in order to perceive those other flavors. And one way to moderate salt when you're cooking is to include salt in the food rather than salt the food after you've cooked it and you're eating it at the table. If you have a salt shaker at the table, you didn't cook it right. So the idea here is that if you use salt in proper dough, in proper measure, while you're cooking, you're going to get the same effect with less salt than if you're putting salt on after you've made the food. I would also urge you to get acquainted with quality salt as well. Some of the higher grade sea salts, which have better flavor and nutritive value. But I know that Saba and Alison are spinning in their chairs right now that I'm advocating for salt, but I'd be remiss as a chef if I didn't, you know, sing the merits of salt. When you talk about restaurants and restaurants that may have more salt than you should have, remember that going back to that same principle, that salt is literally the volume knob on flavor. Literally, the more salt, the more flavor. And a lot of chefs are kind of the rock and rollers with salt. You don't need that much salt to make your food taste great. But some chefs will add more salt to make their food seem more colorful and more pronounced, which is not necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Did I
and
lose my dietitian's allegiance?
no. It is still an essential mineral, and that's why it's important to try and hit that 1500. And some people will be put on a more restrictive diet, maybe 1,000 milligrams, but I've never really heard of someone being put on much less than that. And you're spreading it throughout the day, so you still need sodium. So the other thing that I want to address while I see these beautiful avocados going in is you still need fat. So a lot of times people think heart healthy, no sodium, no fat. It's not true. Like what Chef Brian is saying, you want to have small amounts of sodium put into your food throughout the day, and you need to eat fat. So it's what types of fat you're eating instead of cutting out fat completely. Fat is what helps us stay satiated, and it really is important for a lot of, especially the fat soluble vitamins in our body, for their proper absorption. And your brain is made up of fat. So if you're not eating enough fat, you really are being harmful to your body. So things like salmon, avocado, olive oil. Avocado oil is a great oil. I don't know if you use that one much, Chef. Coconut, peanut butter, things like that are really great to include.
May I also
Absolutely.
add, Alison,
Go ahead.
to what you're saying, to minimize salt, flavoring your food with herbs and spices, rather than making it bland. If you utilize your herbs and spices, you're more likely to need less salt in your cooking. Garlic, lemon, those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of the palette of flavoring agents that you can use. I think the thing that I'm reacting to in my conversation about salt is people who go to the other extreme and say, well, I'm eliminating salt from my diet. And that's what I wrestle with sometimes. But yes, think of the palette of flavor enhancers, especially ginger, garlic, chilies, jalapenos, all of these fresh herbs. How many herbs am I using here? Cilantro, Thai basil, mint, Chinese garlic chives. So absolutely. And another interesting thing is that the better materials, the better vegetables and the better proteins that you work with, the less you really need to do to them to make them taste good. And that's why it's worth getting a high quality piece of fish or getting good quality organic, nutrient dense vegetables. There is value in that, and you don't need to do as much to them to make them taste great.
We have a question.
Sometimes the farmer will say to me, get out of the way of my food.
Sorry, Chef Brian. We have a question related to protein. And I know Alison made this recipe at home and had talked about to the team the amount of protein in each one of these
Yeah,
rolls.
I can go over that again.
And Allie, yeah, so that's, if you could share that, that would be great. And then if you can also touch on the recommended amount of daily protein for one's diet as well.
So everyone's protein needs is going to be a little bit different. It's going to depend on what your weight is, and it's particularly your weight in kilograms. The easiest way to think of it is about half of your body weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you're going to need about 75 grams of protein. So think of half of your body weight. That's how many grams of protein you need per day. And then I'm sure you're wondering how many you should get per meal. Well, they've found that it's best, especially when you're an older adult, to try and get small amounts of protein throughout the day. So instead of having one meal that wouldn't have any protein and another that would have all of your protein, you would want to get somewhere between 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, depending on your specific needs. For these specific rolls, I found that it was about an ounce of vegetables, maybe a little over an ounce when you include the herbs, and then about an ounce of chicken per roll. And 1 ounce of chicken gives you 8 grams of protein, which is a lot. So if you ate 4 of those rolls, you would already be getting up to 32 grams of protein just from 4 rolls. And that doesn't even include the protein you would get from the dipping sauce. So that's already putting almost every person who's on this call at what their needs would be for that meal.
Excellent. Thank you, Allie.
You're welcome.
We also have a question about the vegetables. Can you heat the vegetables before using for those who can't eat raw vegetables?
Absolutely.
You could heat them and chill them, right, Chef Brian?
Sure.
That would still probably make them cold.
Reiterate the question, please.
Sure. Can you heat the vegetables before using for those who can't eat raw vegetables?
Yeah, so I would go back to my comment that you can really build these things with, it doesn't have to be limited to the vegetables I have here. You could use a cooked vegetable. You could use, for example, a ratatouille or a cooked vegetable stew. You could take whatever your leftovers are from a salad or your cooked green beans or succotash, and make them into an interesting presentation by using a rice paper wrapper. Does that answer your question? As far as cooking these exact vegetables, I don't think I would, I could cook my peppers. Yes, I could cook my carrots. I don't think I want to cook my avocados or my cucumbers. And as far as fresh herbs, again, I think the way I would, if I were challenged to make something like that, I think what I would do is develop a filling that accommodates your diet by cooking an array of different vegetables. And the most importantly, in relation to the summer roll wrapper, is they can't be too moist. If you're putting raw tomatoes or something that's too soupy or too wet, you can imagine how difficult that's going to be when you bite into it and eat it. So there has to be sort of a dry and compact factor to it. But other than that, absolutely, I can see, like I said, a succotash or a gumbo or some kind of fun, dry, relatively dry, compact, cooked vegetable going into these summer rolls. And I hope that answers your question. Think of grains as well. Think of all the variety of grains that are available to us now, and that you could be building a grain summer roll with couscous or teft or all the different fun grains that are available to our on our bulgur wheat and quinoa. Think of the fun you could have with other ingredients. Right,
Excellent.
Alison?
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Thank you, Chef Brian. And we had a question earlier that we didn't get to yet, but I think this is a great question from the audience. And they would like to know, what is a dietitian? So Ali, Saba, can you explain what exactly you all do?
Sure, I'd be happy to. A registered dietitian is someone who went to school, to university, and had an education on health and nutrition, at least a bachelor's degree in health and nutrition, so that the dietitian will be able to work in a healthcare setting as well as community, promoting healthy diet and providing dietary counseling to clients, so in how to prevent, how to stay healthy, or if they have a specific condition, for example, diabetes or weight management, the person can go to a dietitian to have a one-on-one counseling and guidance on how to manage the conditions. And we work in Goodwin House. Both of us work for Goodwin House, and our job, varies day to day, from in the healthcare setting to assisted living or independent living. So it's, and the dietitians, like I said, work in hospitals, community, and in areas. Ali, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, they also work in food service. So Saba and I spend a lot of our time working with developing the menus to make sure that there's variety and health, and that it can fit the different dietary needs within our community population. So we really help to make sure that as many people's needs are met. And our focus is really just about food and how it nourishes your body.
One of the things I enjoy most about working with dining services at both Alexandria, Goodwin House, with Goodwin House in general, is working with Saba and Alison, because it is not purely clinical, as Alison was saying. A good dietitian has a sense of flavor and deliciousness, and a chef at Goodwin House has a sense of nutritive value and what's best for our residents and our diners. So the food is not antiseptic or clinical. It's delicious. It's nutrient dense. It looks great. It tastes great. It feels great. And these are elements of the dietitian and the chefs working in concert together to put great food together.
And going along with that, there's a question about, are you planning to include more non-animal sources of protein on the menus in general, like tofu, Beyond Meat, egg substitutes, things like that?
So it depends. Each community is a little bit different because it depends on the resident base and what they're requesting. So just for an example, this is Alison. I work at Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads, and we were serving the Beyond Burger for a long time. And then the residents who are vegetarian emailed us and said, please stop serving the Beyond Burger. It tastes too much like beef. We want the black bean burger offered. So we really have this relationship with the residents where we're listening to their input and what items they want to include on the menu, and we include them. So it really just depends on what the demand is. And we do have a lot of residents in Bailey's Crossroads who like tofu. So we find different ways to include that throughout the weekly menus. But we also can't leave any residents behind who may prefer beef. So it's all a delicate balance of trying to include plant options, but also still meet the needs of those residents who may like more of a red meat and potato type diet as well.
Thank you so much, Alison.
May I speak to that for a moment too?
Of course.
I consider things like the Beyond Burger kind of a gateway vegetarian food. It's designed to mimic and look like and taste like meat, but God leads you to a more vegetable-based diet. My rejoinder to that is, if you want a more vegetable-based diet, eat more vegetables. Don't eat vegetables masquerading as meat.
Exactly, and that's what the vegetarians were saying to us. It tastes too much like meat. So we have a lot of other dishes that are like simple ratatouille type style dishes and stews that don't really have like a meat substitute in them, but it's just more vegetables. And Katie, I know we are cutting a little close on time.
Yes, so we would like to start wrapping it up and thank Chef Brian. Oh,
Chef Brian did a lot of wrapping.
It up. So thank you for all your questions and joining us today. And we hope you enjoyed today's cooking demonstration with Chef Brian and hearing from our Goodwin House dietitians, Alison and Saba. So thank you again to our experts, Chef Brian, Alison, and Saba. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was so fun.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Good. We will send you the link to the recording of today's webinar, and feel free to share this information with your family and friends. So we're going to put up some upcoming events now. We hope you could join us for our upcoming webinars, which includes Live Your Best Life in the Home You Love Most with Goodwin House at Home. That event is on February 27th at 1 p.m. We also have another event coming up, which is Let's Talk About Goodwin House, a resident panel. That one is on March 4th at 11 a.m. And if you would like to see more or learn more, you can go to our website, goodwinhouse.org, and view the event section, view the upcoming events. And if you would like to learn more about Goodwin House, we encourage you to call or email us. We will leave this information on the screen for a few minutes so you can jot it down. And thank you for joining us today. Please stay safe and engaged. And this concludes today's webinar.